Monica walked down the quiet street with her daughter Aaliyah, holding her small hand tightly. The sun was dipping behind the trees, casting long shadows across the pavement, and the soft breeze carried the faint smell of freshly cut grass. It was one of those moments that felt ordinary, almost peaceful, the kind of evening that made her forget the world outside, even for just a little while. Aaliyah skipped ahead for a moment, then stopped and turned, her eyes bright and curious, looking up at her mother. "Mom, look at that bird," she said, pointing to a small blue bird perched on a fence post. Monica smiled, feeling a tiny spark of happiness. She loved these walks with Aaliyah. They didn't have much. Life had been tough, but these moments, simple as they were, made everything else worth it. As they rounded the corner, Monica noticed 2 police cars parked a few yards ahead. She felt a small knot tighten in her stomach. There was nothing unusual happening here. Nothing that would normally draw their attention, but instinctively she knew something wasn't right. The officers stepped out of their cars and started walking toward her. Their faces were stern, their eyes scanning her like she was under some hidden suspicion. "Good evening, ma'am," one of the officers said. His tone polite at first, but there was a weight behind it. Something unspoken, something uncomfortable. "We just need to ask you a few questions." Monica's heart beat faster. "Questions?" she asked, her voice steady, but there was a hint of caution. "About what?" The other officer didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked at Aaliyah, who was clutching her mother's hand tightly, her small face showing worry. "Is this your daughter?" he asked, his tone carrying an edge that made Monica tense. "Yes," Monica said firmly, "and I'd like to know why you're stopping us." The first officer took a step closer. "We've had reports of suspicious activity in this area. Just routine checks." Monica blinked, trying to process the words. "Suspicious activity? What could we possibly be doing that's suspicious?" she asked, her voice rising slightly, though she tried to keep it calm. Aaliyah tugged on her hand, sensing the tension. The officers exchanged a glance, and then the second one spoke again. "We're just doing our job. You know how it is." Monica took a deep breath. She knew how it felt to be on the other side of suspicion, to feel judged before anyone even knew her. She could feel her chest tighten, a mix of anger and frustration building inside her. "I understand your job," she said slowly. "But that doesn't give you the right to question me or my child without reason. We're just walking home from school." The first officer's expression hardened slightly. "We have the right to ask questions. You're not under arrest, but you need to cooperate." Monica could feel the unease in her stomach, but she refused to show fear. She squared her shoulders and looked at them directly. "I am cooperating, but I also have rights. And you have to understand, stopping me and talking to me this way in front of my daughter is not okay." The officers seemed surprised by her assertiveness. They weren't used to being challenged, especially by someone they had already decided was suspicious in their minds. One of them took a step closer, his face a mixture of impatience and disbelief. "You think you know the law?" he said, his voice dripping with condescension. Monica didn't flinch. She looked at him and said, "I don't have to think I know the law. I do know it, and I know my rights. And I know that intimidating a mother in front of her child is wrong." Aaliyah tugged on her mother's sleeve. "Mom, are they going to take us away?" she whispered, her small voice trembling. Monica knelt down, holding her daughter's hands in hers. "No, baby. We're fine. Mom's right here. Nothing's going to happen," she said, trying to soothe her daughter, though inside she felt a mix of fear and determination. She would protect her child no matter what. The first officer scoffed. "You think talking back is going to help? You're making this harder on yourself." Monica's eyes narrowed. She could feel the blood rushing to her face, a surge of adrenaline that made her heart pound. "I am not talking back. I am standing up for myself and my daughter. That is not making it harder. It's making it right." The officers looked at each other again, their expressions flickering between irritation and surprise. They hadn't expected such confidence. Most people, Monica knew from experience, would have stayed silent, bowed their heads, maybe even apologized for nothing. But she wasn't most people. She had fought through life's challenges, raised a child on her own, and refused to be treated as less than human. Aaliyah looked up at her mother, her eyes wide. "Mom, they're so mean," she whispered. Monica hugged her tight. "They don't know us, baby, but we know ourselves, and that's what matters," she said softly. The second officer took a step back, his hand resting near his belt. "We just need to ask you a few things." "Nothing serious," Monica shook her head. "I already answered your questions. Now you need to leave us alone unless you have a real reason to be here. We are walking home. That is it. The officers paused, clearly not used to being confronted with such calm authority. Monica noticed how one of them glanced at his partner, then back at her, a hint of uncertainty on his face. You don't understand, the first officer said finally, his tone softer but still laced with frustration. We're just trying to keep this neighborhood safe. Monica's gaze softened slightly, but her voice remained firm. I understand. I want this neighborhood to be safe too. But keeping it safe doesn't mean harassing a mother and her child. You have to understand the difference. Aaliyah clung to her mother's leg, peeking out at the officers. Monica could feel her daughter's fear but also her trust. Aaliyah believed her mother could handle this, and that belief gave Monica strength. The tension lingered for a few more moments, the air thick with unspoken words. Then slowly the first officer nodded almost reluctantly. Fine, but keep walking carefully. We're watching. Monica stood tall. We will. Thank you for letting us go. As they continued down the street, Monica kept a careful eye on them until they returned to their cars. She could feel the anger simmering beneath her skin, but she also felt a sense of relief. They hadn't taken action, but she knew this wasn't over. She could already imagine the conversations at the station later, the disbelief that someone had the courage to challenge them. Aaliyah squeezed her hand tightly. Mom, you were really brave, she said softly. Monica smiled, brushing a stray hair from her daughter's face. I'm brave because I have to be, baby. Because I want you to know that nobody can make you feel small if you don't let them, she said, her voice steady and warm. They walked the rest of the way home in a quiet silence, the kind that feels heavy with thoughts but comforting in its own way. Monica knew that tonight would stay with Aaliyah, that her daughter would remember this moment, not just for the fear, but for the strength her mother had shown. When they reached their small apartment, Monica put Aaliyah to bed and sat by the window, looking out at the street where it had all happened. She could still feel the tension, the unfairness of being judged simply for the color of her skin. But she also felt pride, quiet and steady, for standing up for herself and for Aaliyah. In that moment, Monica realized something important. Courage wasn't about never feeling fear. It was about facing it, even when the world seemed stacked against you, even when the people in uniform thought they could intimidate you. She had faced them, and she had shown her daughter that dignity and strength could not be taken away. And as the night grew darker outside, Monica knew that tomorrow would bring challenges too. But she also knew she and Aaliyah would face them together, stronger than before, ready to stand up for themselves no matter what. The next morning, Monica woke up to the sound of her alarm buzzing softly beside the bed. Aaliyah was still asleep, curled up with her small arms wrapped around her favorite stuffed animal. Monica took a moment to look at her daughter's peaceful face. Last night's events replayed in her mind. The memory of the officers' faces, their smug attitudes, and the way they tried to make her feel small. She shook her head slightly. She knew that even though the immediate confrontation was over, the tension had not disappeared. The memory lingered like a heavy cloud she couldn't shake. After getting ready, Monica made breakfast, quietly humming a tune to herself. She tried to keep the mood light, so Aaliyah wouldn't feel the weight of what had happened yesterday, but even as she served scrambled eggs and toast, she couldn't stop thinking about how easy it could have been for things to go badly. Aaliyah noticed the serious expression on her mother's face and reached out, holding her hand. Mom, are you okay? Aaliyah asked, her small voice full of concern. Monica forced a smile, brushing a piece of hair behind her ear. I'm okay, baby. Just thinking about school today, she said gently, trying to keep her tone light. She wanted her daughter to feel safe and secure. After breakfast, they walked to the bus stop. The street seemed calm, almost deceptively so. Monica scanned her surroundings, aware that even in a quiet neighborhood, tension could rise unexpectedly. She noticed familiar neighbors smiling and waving, the normal rhythms of life continuing despite the shadow of yesterday. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that eyes were watching, judging. When Aaliyah got on the bus, she turned and waved to Monica. See you after school, Mom, she called, her voice cheerful, unaware of the lingering anxiety in her mother's heart. Monica waved back, a mix of pride and worry flooding her chest. Once Aaliyah was gone, Monica decided to take a longer walk, to clear her mind and think through what she wanted to do next. She walked through the small park near her apartment, the soft crunch of leaves under her shoes grounding her thoughts. Her mind replayed the confrontation repeatedly, analyzing every word, every gesture. She knew that staying silent yesterday could have been easier, safer even, but that wasn't her way. She refused to be intimidated, refused to let someone else dictate how she and her daughter should feel. As she walked, Monica noticed a group of people sitting on a bench watching her curiously. She realized they were probably aware of the incident yesterday, the kind of thing that spreads quickly in a small neighborhood. She kept her head high, walking past them with confidence. She didn't need their validation, but she wanted to show that she wasn't afraid. Later, Monica decided to go to the local community center, hoping to find some guidance. She had been a member for years, attending workshops and volunteering when she could. She knew the staff there were supportive, and she hoped they might offer advice or even just a sympathetic ear. When she arrived, the familiar receptionist greeted her warmly. "Monica, it's good to see you." "How's Aliyah?" she asked. "She's good," Monica said. "Thanks for asking. I had something happen yesterday and I need to talk to someone." The receptionist nodded knowingly and led Monica to a small office where she could sit and speak privately. Monica took a deep breath, recounting the events of the previous afternoon, the words of the officers, the way they tried to belittle her in front of her daughter. She spoke calmly, deliberately, knowing that her voice needed to carry the weight of truth without being consumed by anger. The staff member listened carefully, nodding occasionally. "I'm so sorry that happened, Monica," she said gently. "It's not fair and it's not right. You did the right thing by standing up for yourself and Aliyah. That takes courage." Monica felt a small sense of relief wash over her. Talking about it, explaining every detail, helped her process the tension that had been building inside her. She realized that confronting injustice wasn't just about surviving the moment. It was about teaching Aliyah that it was okay to fight back with dignity and knowledge. After leaving the community center, Monica decided to take a detour on her way home, stopping by a small cafe she liked. She ordered a cup of tea and sat by the window, watching people pass by. The world outside continued as normal, yet the events of yesterday made her see it differently. Every glance, every interaction seemed charged with meaning. She noticed a young man helping an elderly woman carry her groceries, a couple laughing as they walked their dog, a street musician playing softly in the distance. Life went on, but the shadows of yesterday lingered. As she sipped her tea, Monica's phone buzzed with a message. It was from a neighbor who had witnessed the confrontation. "I saw what happened yesterday. You were amazing. I can't believe they tried to treat you that way. If you want, I can help get some support or even document it." Monica smiled, a mixture of gratitude and determination filling her chest. She typed back quickly, thanking the neighbor and expressing her interest in documenting the incident. She knew that creating a record was important, not for revenge but for justice and accountability. Aliyah deserved to see that standing up for yourself could have tangible results. The rest of the day passed in a blur of errands and small tasks. Monica ran to the grocery store, picked up a few items for dinner, and returned home to start preparing a simple meal. She moved with purpose, channeling the lingering adrenaline into productive energy. Cooking for Aliyah always gave her a sense of normalcy, a way to reclaim the day from the tension that had tried to consume it. When Aliyah returned from school, her face was bright and curious. "Mom, guess what happened today?" she exclaimed as she ran into Monica's arms. Monica hugged her tightly, listening as her daughter recounted her day at school, playing with friends, reading a new story and learning a fun song in music class. Monica smiled, encouraging her daughter's excitement while also feeling the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. She knew that these small, joyful moments were precious, and that protecting them sometimes required courage and confrontation. As the evening settled in, Monica and Aliyah sat together on the couch, sharing a bowl of popcorn and watching a favorite show. The warmth of the room, the soft laughter of her daughter helped ease the lingering tension from earlier in the day. Monica reflected on the events that had started to unfold, the officers' behavior, the neighborhood's reaction, the support from the community center, and the neighbor who reached out. She realized that while yesterday had been frightening and unfair, it had also revealed something powerful. She wasn't alone, and she could rely on knowledge, dignity, and courage to navigate difficult moments. That night, as Monica tucked Aliyah into bed, she felt a mix of emotions. Pride, fear, determination, and hope all swirled together. She brushed a lock of hair from her daughter's face and whispered, "Remember, baby, always stand up for what's right, even when it's hard. Courage doesn't mean never being scared. It means facing fear and still doing what you know is right." Aaliyah nodded sleepily, her eyes heavy with sleep but her trust in her mother evident. "I'll remember, Mom," she murmured before drifting off. Monica sat by the window long after her daughter had fallen asleep, thinking about the future. She knew that there could be challenges ahead, that standing up for herself and Aaliyah might bring more scrutiny or difficult encounters. But she also knew that giving in to fear or injustice was never an option. She felt a quiet resolve settle inside her, a deep understanding that courage was not just about confrontation. It was about preparation, awareness, and the knowledge that every action mattered, especially in front of the next generation. As the night deepened, Monica drafted a plan. She would gather information, talk to more witnesses, and consider her options carefully. She wanted to make sure that if anything like yesterday ever happened again, she would be ready not just to defend herself, but to turn the moment into something meaningful, something that could create awareness and prevent others from facing the same intimidation. The quiet hum of the city outside her window reminded her that life moved on, that the world would continue spinning regardless of yesterday's events. But Monica felt a shift within herself, a growing confidence, a sense of readiness, and the knowledge that she could protect her daughter and herself without losing her dignity or her voice. In that stillness, Monica realized something vital. Fear could not be the driver of her life. She had faced it yesterday and she would face it again if needed, but she would do so on her terms. Aaliyah would grow up seeing her mother's courage, learning that standing up for oneself was not about being aggressive. It was about being informed, composed, and resolute. And that lesson, Monica knew, was more valuable than anything else in the world. The morning light slipped gently through the curtains, waking Monica before her alarm went off. She lay still for a moment, staring at the ceiling, her thoughts already circling around what she had decided last night. She couldn't let what happened just fade away. It wasn't only about her anymore. It was about every person who had been treated unfairly, but didn't have the courage or chance to speak up. She had a voice, and now she knew she had to use it. After getting dressed, she went into the kitchen where Aaliyah was already sitting at the table, her hair messy and her eyes still half closed. Monica smiled and poured her a glass of orange juice. "Morning, sleepyhead," she said softly. Aaliyah yawned. "Morning, Mom. Are you okay today?" "I am," Monica replied. "And we're going to be even better soon." Aaliyah tilted her head, curious but not asking too many questions. Monica didn't want to worry her daughter with all the details, but she also wanted her to see that standing up for what's right was a part of life. After walking Aaliyah to school, Monica stopped by her neighbor's apartment, the same woman who had texted her about the incident. The woman, kind-faced and middle-aged, greeted her warmly. "I'm so glad you came," the neighbor said, motioning Monica inside. "I actually have something for you." She handed Monica her phone and showed her a short video clip. It was shaky but clear enough. Two police officers standing in front of Monica, their voices sharp, their tone condescending. Monica's own voice was calm, steady, and firm as she stood up for herself and her daughter. Monica's chest tightened as she watched. Seeing the moment replayed on screen was harder than she expected. She remembered how scared she had felt inside, how much she had tried not to show it for Aaliyah's sake. "I recorded it because I knew it wasn't right," the neighbor said gently. "If you decide to report it, this might help you." Monica blinked back tears of gratitude. "Thank you," she said quietly. "You have no idea how much this means." She left the apartment with the video saved on her phone, her mind buzzing with plans. On her way home, she stopped by the community center again, where she met the same staff member she had spoken with before. "I have proof," Monica said, her voice trembling slightly but filled with determination. "Someone recorded it." The staff member looked at her with admiration. "That's good, Monica. This gives you something solid to work with. I can connect you with someone who can help you file a formal complaint." They spent the next hour going over the details. What happened, what was said, how Monica had reacted, and now, the existence of the video evidence. The staff member made notes carefully, assuring her that she was doing the right thing. As Monica left the center, she felt a new kind of strength inside her. She wasn't just reacting anymore, she was taking control. For the first time since that afternoon, she felt a sense of direction. Later that day, she went to pick up Aaliyah from school. Her daughter came running toward her, backpack bouncing behind her, eyes full of excitement. "Mom, guess what?" she said breathlessly. "We learned about brave people in history today. People who stood up for what was right." Monica smiled, kneeling down to her daughter's level. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. What did you learn about them?" "They said being brave doesn't mean you're not scared," Aaliyah said proudly. "It means you do the right thing even when you are." Monica's throat tightened. She hugged her daughter tightly, whispering, "That's exactly right, baby." Exactly right. That night, after Aaliyah had gone to bed, Monica sat at her small kitchen table with her laptop open. She drafted an email to the local police department's internal affairs office, explaining the incident in detail. Her hands shook slightly as she typed, not from fear but from the weight of the moment. She attached the video, took a deep breath, and hit send. When she leaned back in her chair, she felt both exhausted and relieved. She had done it. She had taken the first step toward accountability. The following morning, Monica received a response. The department acknowledged her complaint and said they would review the matter. They also asked her to come in for a formal interview. The message was polite but distant, written in that official tone that gives nothing away. Monica felt nervous but determined. She knew that facing them again wouldn't be easy, but she also knew she couldn't turn back now. The next day, she arranged for her neighbor to watch Aaliyah after school, then headed downtown to the police headquarters. Her heart raced as she walked through the large glass doors. The air inside was cool, the walls lined with photos of officers in uniform. Every step she took echoed softly against the polished floor. A young officer at the front desk greeted her politely and asked for her name. When she gave it, his expression changed slightly, as if he recognized her case. He nodded and directed her to a small conference room. Inside, two officials were waiting, one a woman in plain clothes, the other a man in a uniform. They introduced themselves, explaining that they were conducting an internal review. Monica sat down, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Ms. Harris," the woman began, "we've seen the video you provided. It's clear that the officer's behavior was inappropriate. We're very sorry for what you went through." Monica nodded, her eyes steady. "I'm not here for an apology," she said softly. "I just want to make sure it doesn't happen again, to anyone." The man in uniform nodded slowly. "That's fair. We're going to handle this properly." The conversation lasted nearly an hour. Monica answered questions carefully, describing exactly how the confrontation began, how she felt, and what impact it had on her daughter. The officials took notes, occasionally glancing at the video on their laptop. When it was over, Monica stood up, thanked them, and walked out feeling lighter. For the first time in days, she felt like her voice had truly been heard. On her way home, she stopped by the park where she and Aaliyah often walked. The air smelled fresh after a light rain. She sat on a bench and watched the children playing on the swings, laughing freely. It reminded her of how important it was to protect that kind of innocence. She thought of Aaliyah and smiled softly. When she got home, her neighbor was sitting on the steps chatting with another woman from the building. "How did it go?" she asked as soon as she saw Monica. "It went well," Monica said, smiling faintly. They listened. "I think they're going to take it seriously." "That's great news," the neighbor said. "You did something really brave, you know." Monica nodded but stayed humble. "I just did what anyone should do," she said. "But thank you." That night, as Monica and Aaliyah sat down for dinner, there was a lightness between them. The unspoken fear that had lingered since that afternoon seemed to fade a little. "Mom," Aaliyah said between bites of spaghetti, "are those bad policemen gone now?" Monica paused, thinking carefully about how to answer. "I don't know yet, baby. But what I do know is that they can't act like that without being held responsible. And that's what matters." Aaliyah nodded, seeming satisfied with that answer. "You're like one of those brave people from school," she said proudly. Monica chuckled softly. "Maybe a little," she said, smiling. "But I'm just your mom trying to do what's right." Over the next few days, things began to shift quietly in the background. Monica received another email from the department confirming that an investigation had been opened. The officers involved were being questioned, and the matter was being taken seriously. The neighbor's video had spread among local community groups, and more people reached out to Monica to thank her for speaking up. One afternoon, as she walked to the corner store, A stranger stopped her. "Are you the woman who stood up to those officers?" the woman asked. Monica hesitated for a second before nodding. The stranger smiled warmly. "Thank you for what you did. You showed a lot of people that they don't have to be afraid to speak the truth." Monica was touched. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I just hope it helps someone else." By the end of the week, Monica felt a growing sense of peace. She didn't know exactly what would come next, but she knew she had done the right thing, and that was enough for now. That evening, after putting Aaliyah to bed, Monica stood by the window again, looking out at the street below. The same street where everything had started. It looked peaceful now, bathed in the soft glow of the streetlights. She took a deep breath, feeling gratitude, strength, and a quiet pride. Life had tested her, but she had not broken. She had faced fear, spoken up, and shown her daughter that dignity was worth defending. As the night deepened, Monica whispered softly to herself, "We're going to be okay." And in her heart, she knew they truly would be. Days turned into a week, and life began to move at a slower, steadier rhythm again. Monica was beginning to feel a sense of calm return to her days, though she knew that the storm hadn't completely passed. The investigation was still ongoing, but she had faith that the truth would find its way to the surface. Every morning, she walked Aaliyah to school, holding her hand as they crossed the familiar streets. The trees were starting to lose their leaves, and the cool breeze of autumn carried with it the smell of change. Aaliyah would chatter about her friends, her drawings, and her favorite songs. Monica listened with a smile, but deep down, she was thinking about how much her daughter had grown through all this. Braver, more observant, and even more compassionate. After dropping her off, Monica stopped by the cafe she liked, ordering her usual tea. She sat by the window again, the same spot where she had read that first supportive message from her neighbor. The sunlight spilled across the table, and for a brief moment she allowed herself to simply breathe. Then her phone buzzed. It was a message from the community center. "Local news has picked up your story. They'd like to interview you, only if you're comfortable, of course." Monica's heart skipped a beat. She stared at the screen for a long time, unsure how to respond. The idea of speaking publicly about what had happened made her nervous, but at the same time, she felt something stir inside her, a quiet but strong sense of purpose. She typed back, "I'll do it." 2 days later, a reporter arrived at the community center with a small camera crew. They were polite, careful, and respectful. Monica sat in a simple chair, wearing a plain blue blouse. She didn't want to look like she was putting on a show. She just wanted to tell the truth. The reporter began gently, asking her to describe what had happened that afternoon. Monica spoke clearly and calmly, recounting the events from the moment the officers approached her to the moment she stood her ground. She didn't exaggerate or dramatize, she simply told the truth exactly as it happened. When she finished, the reporter asked, "What made you decide to speak up instead of walking away?" Monica paused, glancing briefly at the camera. "Because my daughter was there," she said softly. "I couldn't let her see me be silent when something wrong was happening. I needed her to know that her voice matters no matter who tries to silence it." The reporter nodded, visibly moved. "That's powerful," she said. When the interview aired later that evening, it spread quickly. People in the community began talking about it, at the grocery store, at the school, online. Messages started pouring into Monica's inbox. Some were from strangers thanking her for her courage. Others shared their own experiences, saying her story gave them hope. Monica read each message carefully, sometimes with tears in her eyes. She never expected her story to touch so many people. It wasn't about attention or fame. It was about standing up for something that mattered. A few days later, the community center invited her to speak at a local event about equality and respect. Monica hesitated at first, unsure if she was ready to stand in front of a crowd. But when she thought about Aaliyah and the other children growing up, in a world that still had so much to learn, she knew she had to go. The event was held in the small auditorium of the local library. Chairs filled the room, and familiar faces from the neighborhood smiled at her as she walked up to the podium. She could see her neighbor sitting in the front row, giving her an encouraging nod. Monica took a deep breath before speaking. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice was steady. "I'm not a politician," she began. "I'm not an activist. I'm just a mother who wanted to protect her child and do what's right." The room was silent, everyone listening intently. I didn't plan to make a statement that day. I was just walking home with my daughter, like I've done hundreds of times. But when those officers stopped us, something inside me said, "No, not this time." I couldn't let them treat us like we didn't belong. She paused for a moment, gathering her thoughts. People sometimes think that being strong means shouting or fighting back. But real strength, I've learned, is in staying calm, in speaking truth without hate. I wasn't just standing up for myself. I was standing up for every person who's ever been made to feel small. A quiet murmur of agreement spread through the audience. Monica smiled faintly. If there's one thing I want people to take from this, it's that you don't need to be loud to be heard. You just need to be honest, and you need to believe that your dignity matters. When she finished, the audience erupted into applause. Some people stood, clapping with emotion. Monica felt her cheeks warm as she stepped down from the podium, her heart full. After the event, several people came up to her, thanking her for her words. Among them was a young woman who said she had once gone through something similar, but never had the courage to speak out. "You made me feel seen," she told Monica, tears glistening in her eyes. That night, Monica walked home under a clear sky. The stars shimmered faintly, and she felt lighter than she had in weeks. Aaliyah was already asleep when she got home, her small hand resting on her pillow. Monica brushed a kiss on her forehead and whispered, "Mommy's proud of you, baby, and I hope one day you'll be proud of me too." In the following days, the police department released a public statement. They admitted that the officers involved had behaved unprofessionally and announced disciplinary action. They also promised new training programs to ensure better community relations. The statement didn't erase what had happened, but it was a start. When Monica read the news online, she exhaled deeply, feeling a mix of relief and disbelief. She had actually made a difference. Her small act of courage had forced change, even if it was just a little. Later that afternoon, as she picked up Aaliyah from school, she noticed one of the teachers smiling warmly at her. "I saw you on the news," the teacher said. "You're an inspiration to all of us." Monica smiled humbly. "Thank you. I just did what any parent would do." As they walked home, Aaliyah skipped beside her, holding her hand. "Mom, are the police going to be nicer now?" she asked innocently. Monica smiled, squeezing her daughter's hand gently. "I hope so, baby. That's what we're working for, to make sure everyone is treated with kindness." That evening, Monica's phone rang. It was the woman from the news station. "I just wanted to tell you," she said warmly. "Your story has been shared all across the city. People are talking about compassion, justice, and courage because of you." Monica was quiet for a moment. "I didn't mean to start anything big," she said softly. "Sometimes," the reporter replied, "the smallest voices start the biggest changes." When she hung up, Monica sat by the window again. The street below looked peaceful. Children were playing, people were chatting, and the world felt a little lighter. She thought back to that day, the fear, the anger, the uncertainty, and realized how far she had come since then. It wasn't just about confronting injustice anymore. It was about finding her own strength, her own voice, and her own peace. A few days later, Monica returned to the park where it had all begun. She watched families laughing, friends talking, and kids running freely. Aaliyah played on the swings, her laughter ringing through the air. Monica smiled. She had fought through something painful and unfair, but she had turned it into something powerful. She hadn't just stood up for herself. She had shown her daughter and her community that courage could change things. As Aaliyah ran up to her, cheeks flushed and eyes bright, Monica lifted her into her arms. "Mom, can we come here every weekend?" the little girl asked. Monica laughed softly. "Every weekend, baby, promise." They sat together on the grass, watching the sky turn shades of pink and gold. For the first time in a long while, Monica felt peace. Not because the world was perfect, it wasn't, but because she had learned that even one voice, spoken with honesty and courage, could echo far beyond what anyone expected. And as she held her daughter close, Monica whispered quietly to herself, "This is what real strength looks like." Weeks passed, and the air began to grow colder. The trees that had once been bright with orange and gold now stood bare, their branches reaching up toward the gray sky. Monica could feel winter slowly settling in, but for the first time in a long while, her heart felt warm. Life had changed in quiet but powerful ways. The tension that once followed her everywhere had eased. People who used to glance past her now stopped to say hello. Some would smile, others would give her a small nod of respect. The neighborhood felt different, kinder somehow, more aware. Monica didn't see herself as a hero. She still went to work, still packed Aaliyah's lunch every morning, still worried about bills and laundry and the usual small things that made up her life. But beneath all that, there was something new inside her. A steady confidence, a quiet strength that no one could take away anymore. One morning, she got an invitation in the mail. It was from the city's Department of Community Affairs. They wanted her to attend a local meeting about improving relations between the police and the people. Her story, they said, had opened an important conversation, and they wanted her to share her perspective. Monica held the envelope in her hands for a long moment. She thought about that day again, the fear in Aaliyah's eyes, the anger in her own chest, and the courage that had somehow risen when she needed it most. Then she smiled softly and decided to go. The meeting was held in a large hall downtown. When she arrived, there were people from all walks of life: teachers, small business owners, officers, and students. The room buzzed with low conversation. When Monica entered, a few people recognized her from the news. Some came up to thank her quietly. A man from the city council approached her and shook her hand. "You've done more for this community than you realize," he said warmly. "Your story reminded us that respect has to go both ways." Monica nodded. "I just hope it helps make things better," she said softly. When the meeting started, the moderator introduced her to the audience. She wasn't there to give a speech this time, just to share her experience and thoughts. But as she stood before the microphone, she saw people listening with genuine interest. "I didn't expect any of this to happen," she began, her voice steady. "I was just a mother walking home with my daughter. What happened that day could have gone very differently. But instead of anger, I chose calm. And instead of silence, I chose to speak." She looked around the room. "What I learned is that real change doesn't start with big crowds or protests. It starts with small moments of truth. It starts with people deciding to treat each other like human beings again." There was a gentle round of applause, and Monica sat down. For the first time, she noticed a few police officers sitting across the room, listening closely. One of them, a young man who looked new to the force, met her eyes and gave a small nod of respect. Later, during the open discussion, several people shared their stories too. Some spoke about fear, others about misunderstanding, but most talked about hope. The atmosphere in the room felt honest and healing. When the meeting ended, a middle-aged officer approached Monica. He looked thoughtful and sincere. "I wanted to say thank you," he said quietly. "Your story made a lot of us think. We've started new training because of it. It's not perfect yet, but it's a start." Monica smiled. "That means a lot," she said. "All I ever wanted was for people to listen." The officer nodded. "We're listening now." That evening, as she walked home, Monica felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: peace mixed with purpose. It was a calm sort of happiness, the kind that comes when you realize that even your hardest moments can turn into something meaningful. When she got home, Aaliyah ran to her, wrapping her arms tightly around her waist. "Mom, guess what?" she said, eyes bright. "We're learning about heroes in school, and I told my teacher about you." Monica laughed softly, lifting her daughter into her arms. "Me, a hero?" "I don't know about that, sweetheart," Aaliyah nodded seriously. "You are, because you were brave and kind." Monica's eyes softened. "Thank you, baby. But you know what? You were brave too. You stood there and held my hand. You gave me strength." Aaliyah smiled proudly and hugged her again. That night, after putting her daughter to bed, Monica sat by the window like she often did. The streetlights glowed softly outside, and the world seemed quiet. She thought about all that had happened, the fear, the confrontation, the aftermath, and everything in between. It had been painful, yes, but it had also shown her something precious: the power of calm courage. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from one of the women at the meeting. "Thank you for today," it read. "You reminded us that change is possible when people care." Monica smiled and typed back, "We just have to keep caring." Over the next few months, Monica continued to be invited to small community events and workshops. Sometimes she spoke, sometimes she just listened. She never wanted to turn her story into a spotlight. She wanted it to be a lesson. She wanted people to understand that kindness and dignity were stronger than hate. One weekend, she took Aaliyah on a short trip to visit her sister in another city. They took the bus, sharing snacks and laughter along the way. When they arrived, her sister hugged her tightly. "You've become quite the local celebrity," she teased gently. Monica laughed. "I'm just me," she said. "The same old me, maybe a little wiser now." Her sister smiled knowingly. "You've always been wise. You just finally got the world to notice." They spent the weekend together cooking, watching movies, and catching up. It was simple, but it was exactly what Monica needed, to be surrounded by family, laughter, and peace. On the last night of the trip, Monica sat outside on the porch while the stars twinkled faintly above. She could hear Aaliyah laughing inside with her cousins. The sound filled her heart with quiet joy. She thought about the future, not with fear but with hope. She knew the world still had a long way to go. There would still be people who judged others unfairly, still moments of anger and misunderstanding. But she also knew that there were good people everywhere, people willing to learn, listen, and do better. And she wanted to be part of that change. When they returned home, Monica went back to her routine. Work, school runs, dinners, bedtime stories. But something small had shifted in her community. The local police department began holding open talks every month. Officers walked the neighborhoods more often, not to patrol but to talk with people. The tension that once hung in the air seemed to fade little by little. One day, as Monica walked Aaliyah to school, one of the officers she didn't recognize smiled and greeted them kindly. "Good morning," he said. Monica smiled back. "Good morning." It was a small moment, but it felt like proof that things could truly change. As the months passed, Monica found herself being invited to schools to talk to students about courage and respect. She never lectured. She simply told her story in plain words. The students listened closely, some asking questions, others just nodding quietly. After one session, a young boy came up to her and said, "My mom told me about you. She said you're why she feels safer walking home now." Monica was touched deeply. "Tell your mom thank you," she said gently. That evening, she came home feeling grateful. When she tucked Aaliyah into bed, the little girl looked up at her and said, "Mom, when I grow up, I want to help people too. Just like you." Monica smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's face. "You already do, sweetheart. Every time you're kind, every time you stand up for what's right, you're helping." Aaliyah grinned and hugged her tightly. "I love you, Mom." "I love you too," Monica whispered, holding her close. As she sat quietly after Aaliyah fell asleep, Monica realized something simple but beautiful. Life would never be perfect, and she didn't need it to be. What mattered was that she had faced something painful, and instead of letting it break her, she had turned it into light, for herself, for her daughter, and for others. Outside, the street was quiet. The same road where everything had once gone wrong now looked peaceful under the glow of the lamps. Monica watched the world move gently, feeling at ease. She thought back to the very first moment when she decided to speak. She hadn't known what would happen. She hadn't known if anyone would listen. But she had trusted her heart. And that single choice had changed everything. Now people in her town talked more openly about fairness, respect, and empathy. Small acts of kindness began to ripple outward. Neighbors helping neighbors, strangers smiling on the street, people thinking twice before judging someone. Monica didn't take credit for it. She just felt thankful to have played a small part in reminding others of something the world too often forgets: that compassion is power. As she closed the curtains and got ready for bed, she whispered softly to herself, "We're okay now." The world outside was still far from perfect, but inside that small apartment there was peace. A peace that had been earned through courage, patience, and love, and for Monica, the